Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Backstage Bikini podcast. Today, you've just got Jade. It is just me all on my own. However, we are on the 11th of October today. And yes, the Olympia weekend kicks off today. It has probably already kicked off as we're speaking. Prejudging for the first lot of athletes has already gone ahead. But as always, we are here to discuss bikini and, in particular, the predictions that we've got going into the weekend. Now, we woke up this morning to an update from Maureen to say that she wouldn't be competing in this year's Olympia. Now, I was heartbroken. I was genuinely heartbroken to see that, not only for her, because she's an incredible ambassador, she's an incredible uh, participant of the sport. I think in terms of bikini, she sets an absolutely unique and beautiful standard, both as a person and as an athlete. So I was devastated to see it, purely from our sort of observation, getting to see her compete and just enjoying what she brings to the stage every year. And equally, the circumstances around which she has actually had to pull out of the Olympia. That's devastating, to sustain an injury that is completely faultless on her part and on the person's part who sort of stumbled and fell. I don't know whether you've seen her update. You must have done, but gutted, really gutted for her and for everybody else as well. So Maureen, if you do come across this, we can't wait to see you next year. Next year will be your year. This year, whatever the circumstances were to pull you away from it, sad, incredibly sad, but we hope you are well. So that's top two. That is Jen Dory, who has openly admitted that she has to prioritize other things in her life right now over competing at the Olympia, and then Maureen, who suffered an injury. So you have just lost the top two from last year. Interesting in terms of what comes next. So I am just going to pull up a little moment, a little slide, in terms of what I think is coming. So let's do this. I'm doing this on my own, by the way, guys. You're gonna have to bear with me, because this is a individual process for me that I'm trying to navigate, but we will get there. So here we go. So in terms of what we want to discuss, I guess, going into this weekend is what's going to happen now the two girls are out. So you've got Maureen out and you have Jen Dory out of the equation entirely. So in terms of the actual qualified athletes, we've got quite a few new ones coming in, which is, it always makes things interesting in terms of the actual lineup. It's lovely to see fresh faces. It's nice to see new talent on the stage. Anna Setlak is one of them that comes to mind, that has come through this year, and absolutely stormed it. And it's just nice to see new talent, because especially in this division, it is so subjective. You have no idea. You have no idea who's going to be coming through, who is going to knock somebody out of their place. Alice Roca is another one from the USA who has got a beautiful physique, incredibly tiny waist. So plenty of new faces at the Olympia this year. So even though we are losing two, we are gaining quite a few. Angelica Teixeira is back as well at the Olympia for the first time in a good couple of years. So I can't wait. I'm excited. In terms of predictions and what I think is going to happen, it's purely based on historic sort of presentations over the year. At this point, I could be so wrong. And everybody could be so wrong. It only takes one person to come in and absolutely annihilate everybody. So that's always the exciting part for me personally. However, so locking into what we are looking at in terms of top three, in our humble opinion. So for me personally, I've got Amy winning it. Now, we have been quite open about our love for Amy. We've had Amy on the podcast. Grace and I absolutely adore her physique. So it is a sore point for us. in terms of what we think is going to happen next, because ultimately we love to see, I don't know whether that's in the way, we love to see Amy, and we'd love to see Amy win. But from a presentation standpoint, from the way that Amy has displayed her physique time after time after time, so going through Pittsburgh again, New York Pro, I think it was Warsash that she did prior to that as well. She has had a very consistent run in terms of getting this look incredibly right. Now, what we're looking at in terms of sort of the previous judging and last year's awards, Maureen didn't win, yes. But in terms of the actual characteristics of what they were looking for, full belly muscles, full around muscles, not too overly conditioned, nice balance top to bottom, or just across the physique in general, nice flow, lovely posing. Jen in particular is a beautiful poser. Maureen even more so. So in terms of what package the judges are going to be looking for right now, personally, I think Amy is going to deliver it. Now, I'll say that, but I do think Ashley Kaltwasser is going to be really fighting and contending for this top spot this year. It's the first time I've said it, and it is first time I've said it, and it's not that we dislike Ashley in any way, shape, or form. I'm pretty sure we've had comments before calling us the Ashley Kaltwasser hating podcast, and it's absolutely not the case. It really isn't. But from year to year, so if you're looking at Ashley's presentation last year versus how she's shown up recently in that picture in particular, I never thought I'd see it, but Ashley is competing now for size against the likes of Amy, the likes of Maureen, even Laura Lee, the denser, heavier muscled athletes, which is, I'm saying heavier muscled, they're carrying more muscle on their frame comparative to Ashley. Ashley's a petite physique. She always has been. She's a very athletic physique. So for her to match the muscle density on her frame, it wouldn't look right, which is the very, it's the very point of bikini. The point of bikini is that you're bringing your version of that criteria on your frame. So if Ashley was to match the likes of Maureen's muscle mass, for example, or even Laura Lee's muscle mass, it simply wouldn't look right on her frame. However, what her and Adam have done recently is not only develop her physique in terms of muscle mass, so actually putting a little bit more muscle on, but what she's carrying now is a really, really full looking physique. She's never struggled with condition. She's never struggled with balance. But she is now competing next to the likes of Amy, or I personally think she's going to compete very well against the likes of Amy in terms of carrying herself as a less petite athlete next to those girls that are carrying that little bit more muscle. So for me, I've put Amy first and I've put Ashley second. That could flip in a heartbeat, in my opinion. I don't think this is going to be very cut and dry at all. But I do think those two are your front runners. Amy, just because of how consistent she's been, she's gathered a lot of feedback over the year. Her and Jamie know exactly what they're doing going into this show. They know what feedback they've had. They know what the judges like. They know what the judges don't like. If I was to split it between Ashley and Amy, potentially a little bit of a conditioning point if Amy doesn't quite come in the way that the judges want. Ashley, in my opinion, has never missed in terms of condition. So long as Amy and Jamie get that absolutely nailed in terms of what the judges want on her physique, that's not going to come into question. Posing, I think, is going to be the distinguishing factor here. So I know Ashley's done an incredible amount of work on her posing. She's progressively got better over time, and that's evident every time she comes back on stage. However, I think if it's coming down to finer details, which it is going to do with these girls, you are splitting hairs, it's not going to be straightforward. I think if it comes down to it, I think Amy's going to top it on posing and overall presentation in terms of her flow on stage, her confidence, her aura, if you like, the personality she brings to stage and the way in which she moves is beautiful. It is very flawless. So I'm going to call it. I think it's going to be Amy. I really want it to be Amy. I'd be really happy if it was Ashley too, because I think as a representative of the sport, Ashley has just been going. She's been going for such a long time, and I think it would be a disservice to Ashley to not recognize just how much she contributes to this sport and to award her for it. Do I think it's her weekend? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm personally pitching my bets on Amy at this point. Um, Laura Lee, this one's a difficult one for me because Laura Lee won the Arnolds this year and she did incredibly well and she showed up beautifully. The thing with Laura Lee is she doesn't compete across the year. So we have very little information in terms of what her physique is actually going to look like. So that's always hard to look at predictions in terms of where somebody's going to be placed versus not. She placed fourth, I think, in recollection last year. So fourth last year. The thing with Laura Lee is condition wise, I know she's had some difficulty. We spoke to her on the podcast, and I know she's had some difficulty around stress. Historically, the last Olympia that she went into, she commented that it was probably the most present and the most sort of settled and happy and in the moment that she's ever been at an Olympia, full stop. She definitely thought it was going to be her year last year, and it simply wasn't, unfortunately. But with Laura Lee's physique, I do feel like she has a bit of a fight on her hands sometimes in terms of fullness and how full her legs come in, especially comparative to the likes of Jen, who she was up against last year, Ashley. Any additional fullness through that quad can really make Laura Lee look quite bottom heavy. It can make her look unbalanced. And against these girls who are coming in better every single time, it's incredibly hard for that not to stand up against the caliber of athlete that she's competing against. And she is. So it'll be interesting to see how she comes in, because I know historically the year before last, the Olympia prior to that, she placed outside of the top five and had come in looking very flat. Just not full, very lean, and her placing had suffered as a result of that, which was really sad to see. So I do think they've got the evidence. I think they've got the data that they need to try and pull her in exactly how she should be. I think with Laura Lee, it's either going to be her year or it's not in terms of placings. I think she's going to suffer placing wise if it's not quite right, or she's going to take it and she's going to come in and completely blow us all out of the water, which is not, it really isn't unreasonable to put that out there at this point, because I think Laura Lee is incredibly consistent in terms of her, the way she delivers herself on stage. Again, she's another one who's incredibly well presented on stage. She brings a unique posing routine, something that we all saw and were instantly trying to emulate. She has a presence on stage that is very, very hard to beat. I think from the front, she is, as long as she gets the balance right with that quad and with the fullness of her overall physique, if she can get the front shot right, she's going to be hard to beat from the back. Who knows at this point? I personally have a third based on how she showed up last year and the year prior. The Olympia seems to be a bit of a miss for her. When she hits the ground running, tends to be around the Arnolds, which is obviously a couple of months later. But she is well rested this year. She seems to be in a really good spot in terms of her presence last year. So if she can emulate that in terms of not bringing any kind of stress on her shoulders or pressure, it's anybody's game. So top three, Laura Lee, Ashley, and Amy. I'd like to say in any order, but I think it's going to be Amy, Ashley, Laura Lee, but we will see. But outside of that, now everybody seems to have shuffled now that we've got Maureen and Jen that won't be competing. In terms of 4 through to 6, this is who I'm looking at. So we've got Ashlyn Little, Ariana Brothers, Isa Pacini, and Vanya Auguste. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing Vanya's surname right. I just butcher them, full stop. But starting with Ashlyn, I think Ashlyn is, again, another very consistent athlete, a very consistent competitor in terms of stage. She is carrying more muscle again, and this is where This is where I'm so impressed with how Ashley has developed her physique over last year, because she is now competing with the likes of Ashlyn, who has got dense muscle bellies on her frame. Ashlyn, in terms of fullness, especially in that photo, in terms of fullness, I think if she gets it right, she could even be fighting for top three potentially. This all boils down to what Laura Lee does with her physique, in my opinion, in terms of where Ashlyn sits. I do think that Laura Lee will trump her from the back. However, Ashlyn from the back has just come on leaps and bounds, in my opinion. I just think she's getting it right all of the time. The fullness, the upper glute, the tie-in, it's not too harsh, it's not too dense. I think any kind of conditioning differences in terms of through the hamstrings is going to show. Amy in particular can show that sometimes. It'll all be down to the walk. But I think with Ashlyn, it depends how she comes in. Well, I mean, it does full stop, doesn't it? But for me, Ashlyn's shape and overall balance and overall flow is very, very nice. I think stage presentation wise, she's a beautiful woman. And I think she could be a real contender for that third or fourth spot, in my opinion. I don't know. I don't know. We don't know, but I think in terms of balance and muscularity, I think Ashlyn is a real contender for it this year. And it'd be really nice to see her in that top 5 spot. So that's my take on Ashlyn at this moment in time. I'm going to jump over to Issa because there's a lot of hype around Issa at the moment. She's with James. And in terms of her back shot, she has come on substantially. So Issa from the front, you don't beat. Simply put, you do not beat her. And the proportions that she's got, the balance that she's got, the waistline that she's got, you simply can't compete with that genetic structure and profile on stage. Where Issa's always fallen down is the back shot in terms of emulating the muscle fullness and the glute development from the back. It's never quite been there to stand against the likes of Maureen, who is just beautiful from the back. She's bubbly, she's full, she's got pretty muscle, everything flows well, the conditioning's perfect. If anything, Maureen's slightly softer. So for Issa to match that, she usually has to come in quite lean. However, that can hurt her in terms of muscle fullness, and it can also make her look quite not stringy, but leaner comparative to the look that they've been preferring and leaning towards recently. They are pulling away drastically from that extreme look, from the extreme conditioning. So it very much depends again with how Issa comes in. She has been looking much fuller and much more complete from the back. Do I think she can stand against the likes of Ashlyn, against Laura Lee, Amy, or Ashley? I don't think so, personally. I think she's looking at 5th this year. I think Ashlyn could take 4th, potentially 3rd, depending on where Laura Lee sits. But I think Issa's looking at 5th this year. I would love to see Issa win it again, but I think with the development of the sport and the look that they're preferring at the moment, I just don't think that she's emulating that completely. Don't get me wrong, I am an amateur athlete, so she's certainly doing it better than me. But I think from a conditioning standpoint and a muscle fullness and just the overall look that she's bringing, they want an achievable look, albeit difficult to achieve because these are professional athletes. They are looking for that full, nice, softer look. They are preferring a much more sort of health exuding, bubbly look at the moment. That's where they're hell-bent on keeping bikini in terms of parameters for the judging criteria. So do I think Issa's going to be our winner this year? Unfortunately not. A couple more points to make. Ariana Brothers, can't wait to see her compete. I really can't. She's another one that's actually transfer coaches. So she was being coached by Paul Ravella, and she is now with James Ioti as well. So Team Atlas athlete as well. I think structurally Ariana is beautiful, simply put, like the wide clavicles at the top, tiny waistline, not quite as small as Ashlyn and the likes of Ashley, for example. She's got a little bit of a thicker waist comparative to those girls. So do I think she's going to be competing with Ashlyn for that 4th or 3rd spot? I don't think she will. Purely on the waistline, but that could all change depending on how they sort of present. But personally, I think Ariana in terms of her flow and muscle fullness, I know conditioning's been a bit of a battle for her this year because we have had a conversation with her. She wasn't quite on the money in terms of condition. I don't believe for a minute that her and James are going to miss that mark, especially for the Olympia and having had a couple of runouts anyway. So Ariana was, I'm pretty sure she was seventh last year in the Olympia, and that's with Jen and Maureen in the mix. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is a battle going on in terms of that fifth place with Ariana in there. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see because I think any one of them could be any one of Issa, Ashlyn, and Ariana could be looking at a top five, top six placing. Obviously, the top five are only awarded, but I do think that Ariana stands to come in sixth personally. I'd love to see a bump up, even if it's by a place, and get closer to that top five mark, because I think structurally and in terms of what she's got to deliver, she very much has the potential to be in that top five. I think this is only her second Olympia as well. So that's incredibly exciting to be breaking that kind of, or making that kind of mark and breaking that sort of top 16 or top 10 breach straight out of the gate. I think it speaks to her potential in the sport and potential at the Olympia. So huge shout out to Ariana. I can't wait to see her personally. I absolutely adore her physique. I just think she's bubbly, she's full. When she gets the condition right, and I'm praying to God that she has this weekend, I just think that she's a beautiful physique, very, very pretty on stage as well. The beauty matters, girls. Unfortunately, the beauty matters. But last but no means least in terms of mentions from me, Vanya August. She was in the top 10, I want to say, last year as well. Hang on, did she? Okay, my mind's gone blank. I would usually bounce off somebody else at this point. However, Vanya's one to watch as well. I think in terms of her posing in particular, I think Vanya is probably one of the best posed on the Olympia stage, and in terms of just general flow on stage anyway. I think she's mesmerizing to watch. With Vanya, it'll be interesting to see because she is one of the more petite athletes in terms of size, height wise. But it'll be interesting to see how she presents up against the likes of Laura Lee, Ashley, and the top five. Do I think she can break it this year? I'm not entirely sure. I think for Vanya, I think it might be a conditioning point. Also, different athletes have different sort of predispositions in terms of conditioning and things like that. I think Vanya tends to come in much fuller. She does look quite lean on that picture that I've chosen in particular, but it can be from a conditioning standpoint from the back in particular. I think when she's coming up against the likes of Amy, who have got incredibly full, dense glutes, Ashley is exactly the same, and especially with the way that she's manipulated her physique recently, she is competitive from the back. She's looking incredibly full and incredibly well balanced. I think Vanya still has some room to sort of manipulate her physique to really pull out everything that she's got to offer in terms of her potential. I would love to see her. I would love to see her in the top five, but I'm not entirely sure that she's going to break it this year with the people that are coming through. I think Ashlyn has just come through a little bit too strong this year. I think she's going to knock her out, as will Issa. But I think structurally she's beautifully put together. Muscle fullness is lovely. I think it might just be a conditioning point potentially, but I could be wrong. So I think that's everything in terms of thought processes. There's some of these girls that I haven't seen compete. Obviously, Issa won the Texas Pro. Oh, was it Texas Pro? Texas, yeah, it was a Texas show either way because she had a cowboy hat. She's coming incredibly well. A lot of them tend to wait and hang fire for the Olympia. Like to Laura Lee, we have no idea what her physique looks like right now. However, we have less than 24 hours to find out. So let me know what your thoughts are in terms of my predictions. I've not gone into too much depth. I'm just going to throw it out there. But I do think that we are looking at a very different lineup in terms of the top five. I think we could be looking at a repeat in terms of Ashley's win. It all depends on how Amy comes in and how Laura Lee comes in. Personally, I think it's anybody's. Who I would like to see win, Amy. But it's all to play for at this point, and that's half the excitement. So if you stay up and watch it, let me know. If you agree with the predictions, let me know. If you disagree entirely, let me know. We love the feedback. It's really important to us, and it just fuels us to keep putting this content out there. But I hope you have a great weekend enjoying the Olympia, guys, and I will see you soon.